functions that the string class has to offer. But before I begin, there are a few points that I would like to highlight. You see, the two major library functions that we learn about in Java in class 10, that is, are character library functions and the library functions of the string class. Now, I've often seen students confuse the methods from belonging to these two classes, right? Therefore, I would like to make this point. The functions or the methods of the character classes often, or not often, always take a character variable or a character constant. They're always passed a character variable or a character constant. For example, let's say char ch equals a, and if we want to test if it's a letter, then we pass this variable to a method called isLetter. All right, we've already learned about this. The character variable is passed to this method. Moreover, if we want to test if character literal A is a letter or not, we can directly pass the character literal to this function. Likewise, if we want to test if it's in uppercase, if it's in lowercase, we can do that as well by passing the character variable or the character literal. In contrast, the methods or the functions of the string library classes work in a different way. Here, we call the method on the string variables. All right. So, for example, here's our string variable, string str equals computer. And if we want to know the length of the string variable, then we would call the length method on the string variable using the dot operator. And in return, we would get back 8, which is the number of letters that are present inside of the string. See, we do not send or pass the string to a method. We call the method on the string. So this is a major key difference, or this is the key difference between the methods belonging to these two classes, character class and string class. And I've often seen students jumble them up, mix them up, and consequently write erroneous code or write output that doesn't make sense. So that's the reason why I want to make this pretty clear that how these methods are to be called for these two classes. Please don't mix them up. It's quite easy to mix them up, but please be a little careful. All right, that's all that I'm asking. Likewise, we can also call the methods directly on string literals. So computer is a string literal, and we want to know the length of the string literal. We don't need to store it inside of a variable. We can directly call the method on it using the dot operator yet again. All right. Now that I've made my point, let's start with the first method of the string library class. The first method is the length method. Now, every time I write a method, I would always write its corresponding return type beside it, followed by an arrow, right? So the return type of this function is an integer, and that is what I'm mentioning over here. That's the return type. Now, why am I doing this? Because if you wanted to store the length in a variable, you would have to know the data type of the value that is returned by length, and that is why you always store the length of a string inside of an integer variable, right? Therefore, this return type is of significance. Now, as the name indicates, it's used to find the number of letters or characters that's present inside of a string variable. So coming to the example, if we call length on computers, as you have just seen earlier, it's going to return us 8 because a computer consists of 8 characters. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Right? So 8 characters, therefore the length would be 8. Now, if you were to call length on an empty string, now what's an empty string? An empty string is a string, of course, which contains double quotes with nothing between these double quotes. The double quotes enclosed no characters at all. and this is referred to as an empty string, and conveniently, as the empty string does not contain or enclose any characters, the output of the length function in this case would be 0. All right, so this is an important point to note, and it would come handy when you solve programs like the largest word in a sentence or the smallest word in a sentence. Then this observation would come handy. All right, moving on to the next function, and we have charAt index. Now, this function is used to access a character at a specified position specified by the index. And this method returns a character type. All right. So here I have an example of string Malayalam, and you would be seeing me using this example quite a lot because of its uniqueness of having repeated letters like A, L, N, and because it's a palindrome as well. So I'm going to be using this example quite a lot. So that's just what I'm mentioning. Now, if I would ask to access the character at index 0, then I would get the character M. Notice that I'm enclosing M inside of single quotes. There's a very good reason why I'm doing that. Well, I'm doing this because the return type of this function is a character, and so as not to confuse between a variable and a character literal, I'm enclosing M within single quotes, and you should be doing that too. Moreover, if I was asked to find out the character at the 7th position, then I would be returning A because that's the character present at the 7th location, right? So this is what I would be returning. Now, a general note about the functions present in the string class. The string class, the name of the functions of the string class are written using the camel case notation, which means if this method contains more than one word, then the first word would be written in all lowercase, followed by the next upcoming words were having its first letter capitalized. That's your camel case notation. Now, if you can remember this notation, if you can understand this notation, you would have no trouble writing down the names of these functions. So sometimes what happens is that students often remember the names of functions like charAt, toUppercase, but they forget how it was written, right? Now, majority of the functions inside of Java uses the camel case notation, all right? So if you understand the camel case notation, you would not have a hard time writing down the names of the functions that you already know, all right? Moreover, the functions in the string class that begin with 2 are used for conversions, okay? Moving on to the next function, but before we do that, there's one small thing that I would like to mention about the charAt function. Now you see, it's quite possible to end up accessing an element at an invalid index. Now, what do I mean by an invalid index? Consider the string, for example. The string has Malayalam, all right? So the invalid index for any string would be negative indexes. Those are indexes which is less than 0. For example, -1, -2, -3, etc. Right? So there are no characters are present at the negative index because we already know that strings are 0 indexed in Java. Moreover, another form of invalid index would be any index for this particular string at least, for any index which is greater than 8. Now, why greater than 8? Because there's no characters that's present at any index that's higher than 8. All right. So that is the reason why these are known as invalid indexes, as there are no valid characters present in those indexes. Now, what if you were to access that a character that is placed at an invalid index? Then you would end up with a string index out of bounds exception. Now, this exception would be thrown if you try to access an element at an invalid index. Now, there's no reason to freak out if you get this. Now, often students get this while writing programs on arrays and strings. Like commonly, index out of bounds exceptions are common with arrays and strings, right? A string index out of bounds exception focuses on the fact that the invalid index has been accessed on a string rather than an array. So if you get these kinds of an exceptions, there's no reason to freak out. You only need to check your code snippet for that part of your code where you're trying to access an element uh, in a side of a string. And you need to check if you're generating the correct index values, and more often than not that the culprit would be the for loop, right? So if you check your for loop, you would be able to figure out that you are in fact generating uh, incorrect index values, and if you correct the for loop, the exception would go away. As simple as that. All right. So moving on to the next function. So next we have the indexOf char function. Now this function is used to get the index of the first occurrence of a given character argument inside of a string. So what do I mean by that? Now, first of all, that we need to get inside of our head clear is that this function is used to return an index, which is why the return type is int, right? Now, which character's index does it return? Well, it returns the character that's passed to it, and more specifically, it returns the index of the first occurrence of a character. Now, what does that mean? Let's say I passed n, the character literal n, to the index of function and called it on this string. Now, m occurs in two locations, right? M occurs here as well as here. Now, out of them, which one is the first occurrence? Of course, the one that's in the 0th index, right? And therefore, the index of function would return you 0 in this case, as m, the first occurrence of m is at the index 0. Now, if I were to search for the first occurrence of L in the string, then what would I get? So L exists in two locations, at index 2 and index 6, and the first occurrence is at index 2, therefore I'm going to get 2. Now, if I were to search for the first occurrence of A, now A occurs at many places, here, 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 and here. Now, out of 4 of them, the index 1 denotes the first occurrence of A, and hence I'm going to get back 1. All right. So that's how the indexOf function works. It gives you the index of the first occurrence of a given character in a string. Likewise, we have another function which does just the opposite, and that is the lastIndexOf char function. Now, indexOf used to find the index of the first occurrence of a given character, and this does the exact opposite, meaning it finds the index of the last occurrence of a character in a string. Yet again, I have the same examples such that you can correlate the differences. Now, if I pass the character literal m to lastIndexOf and I call it on this string, then the answer would be 8. Why? You see, m occurs at two places, at index 0 and at index 8. Now, at index 8 is the last occurrence of m, hence the output 8. Now, for L, now L occurs at two places, at indexes 2 and at indexes 6. 6 happens to be the last occurrence of L, therefore index 6 is returned. Now for A occurs in 4 places, here, 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 and here, and index 7 happens to be the last occurrence of L. So I hope you understood the differences between the lastIndexOf and indexOf functions, right? Moving on to the next function, substring. So this is a very interesting function and a quite important one as well. And this is the function that we're going to be using in our word extraction problems. So the video is going to come up soon. Now, this is used to slice a portion of a string that's marked by the start index and stop index. All right. Let's see this through the help of an example. Then it would be much clearer to us. So str.substring 0, 4 means we want to extract the segment of string or substring, or that's referred by 0, 4, right? So 0 and 4. And you might think that substring is going to extract from 0 to 4, but no, you would be wrong in that case. What substring does is it will start extracting the characters from the start index, right? It will start extracting the characters from the start index, but it will go up till stop index -1. And this will stop here. The output of this would be mala, meaning it always extracts the region, uh, including the indexes start index to stop index -1. Let's see another example. Let's see the substring 5,8. So what would happen in that case? So here it would start extracting from the 5th index, but it would go till the 7th index, because 8 minus 1, stop -1, right? And hence the substring that would be extracted would be A, L, A. All right. Now there's another form of substring function. Now this function only accepts a single index value, and that's the stop index. Now this function call is same as calling the substring 0, stop index, right? So therefore, as we already know, the value of start index is 0, and 0, stop index means substring function is going to extract the content of the substring from 0 to stop index -1. Now, this one point that I've missed out is that substring always returns a new string. It does not change our original string. It only returns a new string marked by the segment stop index and start index. I said that in reverse, right? So let's see what substring 4 is going to return. So we already know that call to substring with a single index means the first or the starting index will always be 0. Therefore, str.substring 4 is str.substring 0, 4. Hence, it would extract characters starting from 0, but it will go up till 4 minus 1, that's till here. And therefore, the output that you're going to get is mala. Now, str.substring 9, what does this mean? It means it would start extracting characters from 0, but it will go up till 9 minus 1, and that's 8. Therefore, the last index. And eventually, we get back the entire string. All right. So these were the two substring functions, the two categories of substring functions that we have in Java. Moving on to our next function. All right. So this function would conclude the last function in this video. And in the next video, we're going to start off with another function of the string library class. So toCharArray is used to get a character array representation of our string. All right. So let's say we have this string of Malayalam, and if I call toCharArray, I will get back a character array consisting of the characters present in the string. So this is the return type, right? So what I'm going to get? I'm going to get the character array consisting of the characters present in the string. So the first character would be M, next would be A, then it would be L, A, lump. Right? Let's see another example. We can call the toCharArray function directly on a string literal as well. For that matter, any string library function can be called on top of a string literal. So for this is what we're going to get. C O M P U E E. Now, why is this required? Well, this is required because in some string problems, knowing the toCharArray method would make your life a lot simple while writing programs, right? So that's why this function is good to know. And moreover, to use this function in the program, you would generally write statements such as this: char arr equals str.charArray terminator. Now, this would store the character array that's returned by this function inside of ARR. All right. So that's the end of this video. We'll see you in the next one, where we'll discuss about a few more functions of the string library class. Right. So that's it for this one. See you in the next one. Bye for now.